Hi everyone, this is Kirsty Worth and this is my PBL presentation. So let's start with Chapter 3. Good projects get to the heart of discipline. The more complex and important the idea is, the better it is for project-based learning. There's more to use. Published curriculum. Published curriculum basically has decisions about what is important to teach the students, and it's basically been decided for us. This is good and bad. Yes, it gives us a framework as what we should teach, but as far as actually teaching our students and teaching the information to every single student, this doesn't necessarily work because the way that they want us to teach it isn't going to help us get the information across to every single student in our class because every single student is going to have a different way of learning. Some students are going to be able to listen to you talk to them the entire time that they're with you. Some students can watch a presentation, and other students aren't going to grasp the information unless they actually have hands-on experience. So the textbook should really be used more as of a guideline rather than the sole base of actually teaching the curriculum to the students. And this is where PBL comes into play. So the big idea, what do we really want the students to learn? That's the question that we need to ask when we do PBL. And we need to take what we want them to learn and apply it in a way that they understand it, both in and outside of the classroom. And the outside portion of the classroom is the most important part. We want to give them real life experiences so that they have real life understanding. This makes students more interested in what they're learning, and they're going to learn it for the long term rather than just the short term. With all of this, it's also important for teachers to communicate with each other. And we all know that 2 brains, 3 brains, 4 brains are all much better than just one brain. And if we can find a way to connect what we're doing in our classroom to what maybe another teacher is doing in their classroom and bring it all together, the better the experience is going to be for the students. So in elementary school, if we can use PBL in the beginning of the year and then tie it into something at the end of the year, the students are going to benefit from it far more than if it was just a single project on its own and never related back into anything. Same thing goes with high school. If you have a math class, maybe you can tie it into economics and then you can tie it into home ec. The next idea that the book talks about, this chapter in particular, is Bloom's taxonomy, and it really goes to both parts of both a teacher and a student in creating and doing the PBL. The teacher wants to take all of these things into consideration and how it's going to translate to the student, and while the student is doing the PBL, they're going to want to be thinking of all of these key ideas and how they can apply it to the project and get as most out of the project as they possibly can. This chapter touches on fixed and growth mindset, which is extremely important in PBL because if you have a child that is stuck in a fixed mindset, when they come across a PBL, they may shut down, they may shy away from it because of how much a PBL is student-based learning rather than the teacher dictating the lesson and the information out of a textbook to the students. So it's really important to identify those students that have a fixed mindset about things and guide them towards having a growth mindset. And one thing that the book emphasizes is that a growth mindset is more about the effort put in rather than the actual grade itself. And this can also be related back to intrinsic value of doing something in class and doing it for the knowledge, not necessarily for the reward in the long term. Chapter 4. So chapter 4 focuses a lot on pitfalls, so that's the part that I'm going to summarize. So, one of the pitfalls that it talks about is a long activity and a very short learning process. So, essentially, the cost outweighs the benefit, and it's creating a PBL that is very lengthy and the activity is very time consuming, but at the end of it, the students aren't really getting as much out of it as they should. The next pitfall that the text goes over is teach over transitional, which is basically researching and then creating a PowerPoint. It's not as effective. What the text is telling us that we need to do in this case to avoid this is, yes, learn the information using technology and the resources that are provided to us, but then actually apply it in real hands-on experiences, real-time experience, rather than just putting it into a PowerPoint presentation, making it look fancy, and repeating it to the classmates, our classmates. Another pitfall that the book goes over is trivial thematic units. And it's not just teaching a theme and that's going to disappear later. The book gives the example of teaching about oceans and doing some things that involve oceans and going to the aquarium and that kind of being it. PBL projects can have a theme. The great thing about PBL projects is that you can take them from the beginning of the year to the end of the year and transform them throughout and still be able to convey a theme throughout the entire year rather than just a specific unit like teaching the students about oceans. Another pitfall that the book talks about trying to avoid is an overly scripted PBL with a lot of steps. The last thing you want to do is make a project so time consuming that the students lose focus and lose sight of why they're actually doing the project, and they end up losing interest about the project. And the last pitfall that chapter 4 talks about is not enough time for assessment or authentic assessment. If you're creating a PBL that has the kids doing very hands-on things like it's supposed to be designed, the last thing you want to do is give them a paper and pencil based test. You need to create assessments that actually go along with what you've actually been teaching them as far as the PBL is concerned. Chapter 5. So chapter 5 is all about the assessment part of PBLs. What we want to do is, like I said, create assessments that are attached to these PBLs to assess how much the students have learned in a real life, hands-on experience. And a lot of districts and schools are actually realizing this and changing the way that they're doing this. So it's not just the students meeting the rigorous expectations, but they're also exceeding the expectations that have been set for them. And it's important to assess along the way and not just at the end of the project. That way the teacher is able to adjust the course of the project when they need to, rather than the students go all the way through and not have any guidance or redirection, and they end up not doing the project the way that it was designed. So there's two main purposes with the PBL assessment. One is measuring the learning of the student in a summative way, and the second purpose is to evaluate the quality of the project. So that way, if there needs to be any changes, there can be before the next time that you do it with the next group of kids or with your next class the next year. And like I said, we need to be having real world assessments rather than just a paper and pencil assessment. The book also suggests doing formative assessments, and the two examples that the book gave were milestones, which chunk the project into smaller portions, and you are able to check in with the students and you're able to correct them or redirect them or reteach the information if you need to. Like I said, rather than just giving them the presentation or giving them the project, giving them a deadline and just telling them go. using milestones, you're able to say, okay, in 2 weeks, you need to have XYZ. And in the 2 weeks, you then check to make sure that everybody's at the same pace, they're getting the project done in the same amount of time. And then you can say, okay, in a week, everybody needs to have ABC done. That way it's easy to see what students are keeping up and what students may be falling behind that may need more clarification or may need you to go over something again, or it'll show you as a class if you need to reteach something so they get a better understanding of what they're supposed to be doing. And the second form of a formative assessment that the book talks about is doing a check-in. It's similar to milestones. You can do it one-on-one if there's an individual portion to the project. You can do it group-wise if you see some groups are struggling, and it really helps you tune into the critical aspects of the project and make sure that every student is contributing and that no one is trying to ride the coattails of their group members, and making sure that everybody's active and learning what they should be as part of these projects. So it's a really great way to keep everybody on track. And that is it for my summaries of chapter 3, 4, and 5. Here's the resource listed. It all comes straight from the book. Hope you guys enjoyed.